The wind never stopped screaming across the island. Even before the sun rose, if it rose at all during the Icelandic winter, the prison was awake. Not alive exactly. More like breathing. Metal doors humming faintly. Cameras blinking. Boots echoing against concrete floors that had memorized the weight of violence. This was Litlaron. The place people whispered about. The place where Iceland sent the men it was afraid of. From the outside, the country looked like a dream. Waterfalls cut through mountains like silver knives. Geysers erupted from the earth as if the land itself was alive. Tourists arrived in thousands, chasing northern lights and quiet beauty. But tucked far from the postcard stood a different Iceland. One built from fences, steel, and routine. Inside these walls, strength mattered. Control mattered more. At exactly 7 a.m., the night shift handed over control. Another day began. Harpa adjusted the heavy vest beneath her uniform, fingers lingering on the fabric for a second longer than necessary. She had been doing this job for 16 years. Long enough to know that fear didn't disappear, it simply learned how to hide. "I hope today will be a normal day," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Normal was rare here. The guards didn't carry guns. No batons. No pepper spray. Their only weapon was a radio clipped to the chest, a thin line of trust between them and disaster. If something went wrong, help would come, but only if they lasted long enough to call for it. Harpa stepped into house 3 with her partner. They always worked in pairs when entering the cell blocks. Always. Some rules existed because someone, somewhere, had paid for their absence in blood. Unlocking the cells was the most dangerous moment of the day. At night, minds unraveled. Regret grew sharp edges. Rage fermented in silence. Suicide attempts happened when the lights were off and no one was watching. Steel doors opened one by one. "Good morning," Harpa called out. No response meant trouble. "I need a sign of life from everyone." Faces appeared behind the bars. Some hostile. Some hollow. Some still half asleep. One by one, the prisoners moved, spoke, breathed. Everyone was alive. For now. The prison was divided into 4 main buildings. Isolation. Administration. Cells for new arrivals. And then House 4, the largest, the loudest, the most unpredictable. 55 men lived there, each carrying a story heavy enough to crush anyone foolish enough to listen too closely. Cameras followed every movement. Kitchens were shared. Cells were small, 8 square meters each, with a bed, a toilet, a television. Nothing extra. Nothing unnecessary. The only place without cameras was inside the cells. That blind spot kept the guards awake at night. In House 4, Marco woke before the doors unlocked. He had learned the rhythm quickly. Wake up early. Make your bed. Control what little you can. Time moved faster when you pretended it belonged to you. At 43, Marco had lived several lives already: restaurant owner, father, smuggler. Now he was inmate number unknown, 3 months into a sentence that hadn't yet been officially spoken aloud. "I keep myself busy," he said later. "That's how you survive here." He locked his cell door behind him before leaving. Theft was common. Trust was expensive. At the guard station, Marco handed over his key and received a small card in return. That card was his identity now. Without it, he didn't exist outside the corridor. He walked fast. Work started at 8:30 sharp. The metal workshop smelled of oil and sparks. It was loud, dangerous, and precious. Jobs were limited. Tools were lethal. Only prisoners deemed low risk were allowed inside. Marco had convinced them. He didn't know metal when he arrived. He knew kitchens, knives, heat, but not this. Still, he learned. Everyone learned something in prison, even if it was just how to endure. He earned the equivalent of $3 an hour. Most of it went to his children. 2 girls. 14 and 16. Too young to understand why their father wasn't coming home. Work wasn't about money. It was about silence. 6 hours where the walls loosened their grip on his thoughts. Not everyone worked. Some stayed upstairs, swallowed pills, slept through the day. Others weren't allowed near tools at all. Like Ingo. At 23, Ingo was already serving the longest sentence in the prison. 18 years. Armed robberies. A shooting. A stabbing that nearly killed a man. Unpredictable. He spent most days alone, music pulsing through cheap headphones, lyrics scratched onto loose paper. Anger poured into verses. Rage shaped into rhythm. Music was the only thing that didn't try to control him. "I just want to go home," he said once, staring at the wall as if it might open out of pity. 10 years remained before that was even possible. Elsewhere, Harpa checked the isolation wing. Empty for now. The cells there were stripped of everything. No objects. No control. Toilets flushed only by guards. Cameras stared down without blinking. Anyone placed there was considered dangerous, to others or to themselves. By late morning, the prison settled into an uneasy calm. Workshops buzzed. Cameras watched. Guards counted keys and cards, tracking bodies like pieces on a board no one ever won. Beyond the fences, the wind kept howling. Inside, time crawled. And no one, guard or prisoner, forgot where they were. By afternoon, the prison began to change its mood. During the day, structure kept the worst impulses sedated. Work schedules, head counts, workshops, movement. Purpose, even artificial, was a powerful drug. But once the clocks crept past midday, the energy inside Litleron thickened. Men grew restless. Thoughts had room to stretch. Harpa felt it before she saw it. She had learned to read the prison the way sailors read the sea. A glance too long. A hallway too quiet. A laugh that didn't belong. After 16 years, instinct spoke louder than policy. The isolation wing remained empty, but that meant nothing. Empty rooms had a way of filling themselves. In the carpentry workshop, sawdust hung in the air like fog. Wooden cutting boards lay half-finished on long tables. Objects meant for kitchens, not cages. John, the workshop supervisor, moved between the men with careful calm. He trusted none of them completely, and yet he invested in them all. I talked to them first, he explained once. Then I listened to what other guards say. You can't rush judgment here. The tools were dangerous. Every hammer, every blade carried the potential to end a life. Still, John believed in something rare inside prison walls. The future. Some of the men here would walk free one day. When they did, they would need more than memories of steel doors and numbered meals. They would need skills. Proof, if only to themselves, that they were more than their crimes. A few had already passed journeyman exams while still incarcerated. John carried that pride quietly, the way you carry something fragile. Still, at the end of each shift, he swept them all with a metal detector. Trust never canceled caution. Across the grounds, Security Chief Omar cataloged items confiscated over the years. Homemade knives carved from plastic. Tattoo machines built from pens and electric razors. A child's toy that was actually a phone, SIM card intact. Men dismantled permitted objects to create forbidden ones. Game consoles sacrificed for parts. Appliances reduced to components. Time made them inventive. The cells aren't monitored, Omar said. That's what worries us. That was why the guards wore stab-resistant vests. Why they never turned their backs for long. Why even a quiet shift demanded attention. Outside, 2 fences rose 4 meters high, topped with sensors and watched by cameras. Guards walked the perimeter daily, scanning for signs of interference. A football once landed between the fences, cut open, stuffed with a phone, taped shut. Nothing surprised them anymore. Or so they thought. In the afternoon, yard time began. Men from different corridors met under open sky for the first time that day. It was controlled chaos. Bodies lifting weights. Eyes measuring each other. Alliances forming and dissolving without words. From the guard tower, John watched closely. Who's talking to who? He muttered. That's what matters. Fights erupted quickly here. Over insults. Over glances. Over nothing at all. Today, tension crackled but didn't break. Radio stayed quiet. No alarms. Marco chose the gym instead of the yard. He trained every day. Prison taught him that weakness attracted attention. Strength bought space. The gym was imperfect, limited equipment, slippery floors, but it cleared his head. Later you relax, he said between sets. Your mind stops going stupid places. Around him, men from different countries lifted and strained. Spanish, Polish, faces hardened by circumstance rather than geography. Everyone watched everyone else. An hour later, sweat-soaked and calmer, Marco returned to his corridor. Evening was approaching. That was when things got dangerous. At 3:30 p.m., the late shift began. Harpa was back. Evenings were unpredictable. During the day, prisoners followed a program. At night, there was nothing. No work. No movement. No distraction. Just time, and time was cruel. During handover, Harpa learned that one inmate had been caught with drugs earlier. He was already in solitary confinement. They found this on him, her colleague said, holding up a makeshift pipe and a modified fork. Harpa nodded. The search would come later. Late-night searches were safer. Everyone locked in. Fewer variables. At 5 p.m., the corridors opened for the last time. Marco headed to the prison shop. It was small, expensive, and essential. Iceland was unforgiving even outside prison walls. Inside, a simple yogurt could cost nearly $4. Onions, Marco said. Cooking cream. He counted carefully. $14 per day didn't stretch far. Back in the corridor, the kitchen came alive. Knives were chained to counters. Every movement was watched, even if the cameras didn't record sound. Marco cooked moussaka, potatoes, meat, vegetables. Food grounded him, reminded him of life before bars. He cooked for others too. Pooling money saved costs, but it also bought loyalty. In prison, shared meals meant shared protection. Meszek, a fellow inmate from Poland, chopped onions beside him. "He's crazy," Marco laughed softly. "But he's my guy." Friendship was rare here. Dangerous even, but loneliness was worse. By 7 p.m. the corridors closed. Head count followed. Harpa and her colleague walked slowly, eyes sharp, faces calm. They didn't need a list. They knew every man by heart. "How's it going?" "All good." "Everything fine?" A few words exchanged. Enough to catch cracks before they split wide open. Once the doors locked, the prison exhaled. And then it held its breath. Evenings were collision time. Men paced, talked, whispered, planned. Guards watched monitors without blinking, scanning for patterns that didn't belong. For Marco, night was the hardest. He sat on his bed, phone in hand, legal monitored calls only. Messages to his girlfriend in Sweden. Letters to his daughters. He replayed the moment everything collapsed. The dogs at the checkpoint. The photos sent to the wrong people. The instinct he ignored. "I knew something would go wrong," he admitted to no one. He justified nothing. He drew lines in his mind. Some crimes, he told himself, were unforgivable. He clung to that distinction like a life raft. At 10 p.m. lights out approached. Some prisoners tried to stretch the moment. Slow steps, last words, lingering glances down the corridor. 10 hours locked inside a box left too much room for thought. "Good night," Harpa said, locking doors. Once every cell was secured, the real work began. The search. The inmate from earlier remained in solitary. His cell stood empty, waiting to be peeled apart. Harpa and her colleague entered methodically. Bed first. Bathroom next. Shelves. Pillow. Under it, contraband. Drugs. A screwdriver. Acid strips. Then more. A Wi-Fi router. A webcam. Harpa frowned. How did he even? Recycling plant, she realized. Opportunity. They kept searching. Another router. And another. For in total, he had been stealing them systematically, planning to repair and trade them. Currency inside the walls. They documented everything. Photographed. Logged. Backed. Nothing escaped notice. By the time they checked the mattress, nearly an hour had passed. The cell was stripped bare. "He's lost his job," Harpa said. "At least. Probably more." Paperwork filled the rest of the shift. Evidence lists. Reports. Decisions deferred to management. At midnight, Harpa finally removed her vest. She went home. Inside the prison, night swallowed everything. For the inmates, another long stretch of darkness began. Unchanged, relentless, waiting. Night never truly slept at Lit Laran. Even after lights out, the prison remained alert. Cameras humming, monitors glowing, guards watching for the smallest shift in pattern. Darkness didn't calm the men inside. It sharpened them. 10 hours locked in a concrete box gave thoughts room to wander into places they didn't belong. Some prayed. Some planned. Some simply stared at the ceiling, counting breaths until morning. By dawn, the cycle began again. Steel doors opened. Radios crackled. Another shift took control of a place that never really let go. That morning, something different happened. Two men walked through the prison gates, not in uniform, not in chains. Former inmates. Free men. They carried no authority, only experience. And inside these walls, experience carried weight. They worked for an organization built by someone who knew prison from the inside. 15 years behind bars had taught him what the system often missed. Punishment alone didn't fix anything. "We listen," he said. "That's where it starts." They moved through the corridors with a calm familiarity that unsettled some guards and comforted many inmates. These were men who had survived the same steel and silence, and made it out. Their visit that day was for Hacker. Hacker was known beyond the prison. A rapper. A voice that carried outside these walls. Music had given him a name, but drugs had given him a sentence. Nearly 2 years for trafficking. Long enough to lose momentum. Long enough to doubt himself. He sat with pen and paper as they talked. Lyrics scribbled in the margins. Ideas half-formed. "I write all the time," he said. "But real songs. I think those come when I'm free again." The men listened. Suggested paths forward. Even possibilities inside. Teaching, mentoring, turning time into something that didn't rot. When they left, the gates opened easily for them. That was the hardest part. It always felt good to walk out. For years, that hadn't been possible. The sound of the gate unlocking stayed with you. Inside, men watched them go. At 3:30 p.m., the late shift returned. Harpa was back on duty. Evenings were always worse. Everyone knew it. During the day, prisoners had roles: worker, trainee, student. At night, they were just inmates again. Restless. Bored. Dangerous. She took her position in House 4, the largest cell block. During handover, she was briefed quickly. The inmate from the previous night remained in solitary. Management was reviewing the confiscated items. "He's in trouble," her colleague said. Harpa nodded. Trouble was relative here. At 5 o'clock, the corridors opened one last time. Marco headed to the shop again. Small errands had become anchors in his day. A way to feel useful. Normal. Cooking helped too. Back in the shared kitchen, he prepared another meal. The knives stayed chained. Conversation stayed light. Food smelled like something from the outside world, warm, familiar, human. "This keeps me sane," Marco said quietly, stirring the pot. "Keeps my head straight." Eating together softened the edges of the place. For half an hour, the prison almost felt ordinary. Almost. By 7, movement stopped. Head count followed. Harpa and her colleague walked the corridors slowly. No list. No rush. They checked faces, posture, tone. You could feel when something was wrong. Tonight, everything held. "Everyone's here," Harpa said. The doors locked. Cameras took over. Inside the control room, guards leaned forward, eyes scanning screens. Evenings brought collisions, arguments over nothing, schemes born of boredom. Men had too much time to think, and thinking was dangerous. Marco returned to his cell. He wrote messages to his girlfriend in Sweden. The distance hurt more than the walls. 2,000 kilometers might as well have been another planet. He thought of his daughters. The court battles with their mother. The years slipping past while he stood still. "Sometimes you're up," he murmured. "Sometimes you're down. That's life." But prison twisted life into something else entirely. At 10 o'clock, lights out came again. Some men tried to stretch the moment. Guards didn't allow it. "Good night." Doors slammed shut. Silence returned, but it wasn't peaceful. Later that night, the paperwork from the cell search was finalized. The items lay on a table: drugs, improvised weapons, stolen routers, a webcam. Evidence of ingenuity born from confinement. Management reviewed the findings. The decision was swift. The inmate would remain in solitary confinement. His job at the recycling plant was gone. Privileges revoked. Consequences enforced. In prison, mistakes echoed loudly. Harpa finished her shift just before midnight. She removed her vest, muscles aching, mind still alert. Going home was always a relief, but never a release. The prison followed you. In dreams. In habits. In the way you scanned rooms even when you didn't need to. She stepped outside into the cold Icelandic night. Inside, the inmates remained. Morning came again. Not long after filming ended, Marco received his sentence. 4 years and 6 months. Plus a fine. The words landed heavier than he expected, even though he'd prepared for them. Numbers turned into years. Years into missed birthdays. Missed moments. Missed lives. He sat alone afterward, absorbing it. "It will be a long time," he said, "before I see them again." The routine would continue. Work, gym, cooking, letters. Nights that stretched endlessly. Days that blurred together. Some men would leave these walls changed. Others would return. Some wouldn't survive the weight. Litlaron stood firm against the wind, surrounded by water, cameras watching every angle. Escape was nearly impossible. But endurance, that was required. For the guards, who balanced vigilance with humanity. For the inmates, who learned quickly that strength here wasn't just muscle, it was patience. Another day ended. Another began. And inside Iceland's toughest prison, time kept moving, slow, relentless, and unforgiving.